Hello and welcome to the Big Three podcast with Adarsh and Adam. In this podcast, me and Adam take you through all things cricket. Today, we are going to take you through all the recent tests which have happened: India versus Australia, New Zealand versus England, and South Africa versus Sri Lanka, and West Indies versus Bangladesh. So, starting off with India versus Australia, well, people thought that Australia will bounce back, but they did in some fashion, right? They beat India quite comprehensively, and it can be termed as near about an innings defeat. And yeah, I think there are a lot of things to address in this podcast. But what did you make of the test?
I thought it was really interesting that the Indian first innings was similar to the first innings in the first test. However, the way the Australians responded was different,
Yeah,
and they had a very difficult task facing Bumrah on the lights. And I
yeah,
didn't think McSweeney or Labuschagne would be able to do it really.
yeah,
I thought there'd be 3 or 4 down at least by the end, but those two managed to kind of hold out, which then enabled them to come out the next day in better conditions, and Travis had to then make a big score. But a lot of it was down to maybe India didn't bowl as well at Labuschagne and McSweeney, but those two survived, and then they were able to build upon that and have like a match winning lead really. So I
yeah.
thought that was the key moment. It was the last session on day one.
Yeah, I think cricket is a very funny game because this was after the Khawaja wicket in day one. Yeah, after day one when India got bowled out for 180,
Yeah,
McSweeney got dropped by Rishabh Pant when he was
yeah,
at around one or something. At
yeah,
that moment, if that wicket fell down, the game could have been completely different because you'd
yeah.
have Steve Smith and Manas Labuschagne batting together, and who knows, Head might have gotten out then. But yeah, I think the fact that Labuschagne has gotten back into form is really concerning for India, or at least has got us 50. And McSweeney looked all right. He didn't look spectacular to me, but he looked better than the first test. And yeah, I just can't go on enough about Travis Head because everyone needs some of Travis Head in their life. And
he he's exploded, hasn't he? Because maybe 3 or 4 years ago he was decent, but the
yeah,
last 2 years he's become exceptional.
yeah,
So
I
he's
think
batting like one of the Fab Four now, isn't he? Whereas before he was like a row below, a row below, a rung below. Sorry, and but now he's kind of completely exploded. And it's quite
yeah.
funny because it's relatively late in his career. He's kind of emerged as this kind of world class batsman. I mean, when I first knew him, he bowled a bit more, and I think some people said he might be more of a kind of white ball specialist.
Yeah.
But he's really kicked on. It's impressive.
Yeah, I think no one expected this, and with Head, yeah, he was a RCB player, so it's something of pride for me.
Yeah,
And with Head, I think you can you said he is in the Fab. He could be somewhere near in the level of the Fab Four, but honestly, I'd pick him above the Fab Four. And if I had to win a game, an important
yeah.
game, I'd pick him above all of the Fab Four, including
Oh
Joe Root.
wow.
Yeah, because the amount of games you look at the games he's had an impact on. He scored a century, I think, in the Ashes 2021. He scored a
Yeah,
century in the WTC final, a match-winning
yeah,
century, a match-winning century in the ODI World Cup final, and
yeah,
a match-winning century here. His century was the difference between the two innings. If you
yeah,
remove
yeah,
that innings, then Australia have would have to bat for the fourth time again for a longer time, and who
yeah.
knows what would have happened. And Mitchell Stark, I think he takes on a different his alter ego comes to the fore during pink ball test because
Definitely.
he is unplayable, nigh on
Yeah.
unplayable in pink ball
With
tests.
the pink ball under lights, there's no one else you'd want bowling really. He's the best man in those conditions.
Yeah, he is, and to be honest, Scott Boland too. He looked really good, and
Mm,
for the little while he was bowling in front of Kohli and Shubman Gill, he was constantly hitting a length and moving it away, moving it in. He doesn't have much movement to offer, but he was exploiting it really well. And Cummins in the last innings, I think he took a five for. He looks back in form, and I said
mm,
in the last week's episode that Cummins was not looking up to where he is generally,
mm.
and he's changed that. Now, yeah, Lion got only one over to bowl,
Yeah,
and
he's
yeah,
going to need some physio and a nice bath, isn't he? Cummings said.
Yeah, a lot of rest for Lion necessary.
Yeah,
Yeah, Mitchell Marsh, not much impact there. So yeah, the Australian bowl, they've basically won a test with only three bowlers in this game,
yeah.
and that is remarkable. People need to take notice. And India batted for only 81 overs, so something for them to improve there. And if I look at India's batting, then yeah, Yashasvi Jaiswal didn't do well in the first innings,
Yeah.
and he didn't do well in the second innings either. Rahul also failed. Rahul got a start in the first innings, and
Mm,
yeah, for me the main talking point here is Shubman did well for both the innings. Pant is
mm,
okay, but Rohit and Virat got a century last game, so we can
yeah.
say that he's maybe he can get a bit of leeway here. But I saw
Mm,
Rohit batting in all of the 40 balls he batted in the both innings combined, and he did not look one bit promising to me. What about you?
It was interesting in the second innings, wasn't it? Because he was almost out about twice in the first two balls. I think once he was given LBW and I think he touched it and it was a no ball anyway.
Yeah,
But he did not look comfortable at all. And
yeah,
it looked kind of inevitable that he would get out that evening, didn't it?
yeah.
Um, as opposed to, say, Pant, who looked good. So do you think they were right not making Sharma open? Do you think bringing him in the middle order was the right thing to do, or would you have opened with him?
I would have actually opened with him if he were to
Hmm.
be in my side. First of all, he wouldn't be in my side. But
Yeah.
if he played, then he'd be opening because he had played at number five, number four before, and you have seen what he did. He does not average particularly well there. And
Hmm.
now on Rohit itself, I think his captaincy, and people have been going on and on about this, and I have very passionate views about this because if you saw the way he captained you throughout the
Hmm.
course of the game, and a lot of people have brought this up, his captaincy looked listless. He wasn't going up to
Hmm.
the bowlers, cheering them, and not making any field changes at any moment. Like people go on about how Stokes makes a fielding change every two
Hmm.
moments. And
Yeah.
Rohit
Yeah.
Sharma is like the exact opposite of that. He does not
Yeah.
make a fielding change for the entire 90 overs. He has plan A and he does not have any plan after that. Bumrah or nothing. And that does not
Yeah.
work in every game. Bumrah had a relatively, by Bumrah standards, he had a off test this game. And that led India into losing this game. That head wicket, and in my opinion, if India has to go forward, the best
Hmm.
option for India would be to give Bumrah the captaincy and
Hmm.
drop Rohit would be my way forward. But yeah, his captaincy to me has looked mediocre at best.
I can't think of many occasions where a captain has been sacked during a series when the series isn't finished. In a sense, when I don't know when it's 3-0 with two to play, I've seen it, but not when it's 1-1 with three to play. Can you think of many times when that's happened?
No, I cannot. But uh, I think he has a lot. I have like he's got a lot what he's done for what he deserves to be sacked because he got whitewashed by New Zealand at home.
Yeah.
So that is one big thing, and he lost here in this game and had a lot of things to answer for. He picked Ashwin, didn't pick Jadeja, and
Mm,
dropped Sundar as well. And I didn't see Ashwin making much of an impact, but that's
mm,
okay. I do not mind the selection of Ashwin. And then he goes on to the press conference and throws Siraj under the bus. He says that
mm.
Siraj was too aggressive. Like you're supposed to be the captain. You're not supposed to put him, sell him down the river in front of the
Yeah,
media.
you do that in house, don't you? In the dressing room, you don't do it in front of the cameras.
Yeah, and yeah, just for me, I cannot go on enough about this. Like people like you're as passionate as you are about the baseball regime in
Yeah,
England. The same thing applies for me with Rohit, and same with
yeah.
Gambhir, honestly, because Rohit has at least been coming out to address the press conferences, but
Mm.
Gambhir just he comes out after wins, but he goes inside his shell after losses, and that's not a way for a coach to be. And a
But
lot of
what's interesting is that
yeah.
the side was actually stronger in this test than it was in the test that they won. And Australia were weaker. Hazelwood was injured. And Hazelwood's an exceptional bowler. So does that kind of affect India's confidence at all?
Um, I I think India's confidence has definitely taken a hit, but
Yeah,
it was more of like we mentioned, India got the best of conditions to bat on in Perth on day two. They got a
yeah,
very good partnership, and they had a lot of things go their way for this game to be as it
yeah,
panned out. And same with Australia. So there's a lot of unpredictability with Test cricket right now. So we
yeah.
cannot
Really
say
is.
that, but uh, confidence has taken a hit. But I do expect India to at least at Melbourne and Sydney get one win from there. And The GABA is the one which will decide the series, according to me. The GABA is is the decider test, in my opinion.
I, I suppose the worry would be for India that when you saw Australia facing Bumrah in the first test, they looked like like a rabbit in the headlights.
Yeah.
Um, but they kind of got a bit more confident in this test, and even guys like McSweeney and Labuschagne, who's out of form, uh, had a way to kind of at least repel him a bit. And I don't know. I think it's kind of the onus is back on India again to think of something else.
Yeah, it just looked like in the first test. I remember after India declared, they came out and it looked like the most pathetic session of play I've seen under an Australian team, and
Yeah,
they
yeah,
were completely, they were looking miserable. And
they were
it's,
beaten already, weren't they?
yeah, and you see them right now and it looks completely different. Harshit Rana is coming into bowl and he does not have as much venom in his bowling. Bumrah can only do so much. Siraj is busy with other things in cricket life,
Mm,
and Nitish Kumar Reddy is not bowling all that much. So yeah, I think Shami's absence is being felt a lot because
mm,
Siraj is a momentum bowler, a rhythm bowler. Bumrah can only deliver so much, but you need
mm,
Shami to be your guy who can deliver, like Hazelwood or like Pat Cummins. You need
yeah.
Shami, and I think India's feeling that right now.
I mean, I think a lot of the experts, say someone like Jared Kimber, predicted an Australia win before the series started. So is it a? It could be. Could it be the case that the first test was like an aberration, and we're going to revert back to what uh, other people have predicted, and in the end, Australia win?
Uh, to me, it does not look like an aberration.
Okay.
To me, it looks like it'll be a close fought series. India wins 3-2 or Australia wins 3-2, somewhere around there. It could go 4-1 to either side as well, but I'm not gonna say that Australia.
Sometimes there's rain around in places like Melbourne.
Yeah, I don't think you need all 5 days to
No,
get a
true,
result
true.
these days. This game ended in what, 2-1 sessions?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so 7 sessions is all it took for this game to end, and they'll get that with or without rain in that game. And yeah, I think the one of the major talking points in this game has been sledging and
Oh yeah, I saw that.
How Siraj sledged Travis Head. So
Mm,
I'll just put forth my opinion, and I want to know what you think of this. In my
yeah,
opinion, cricket is a very soft game. Cricket is supposed to be played on a top level among nations who want to win against each other. There are
yeah,
billions of dollars in the line. People
yeah.
want to win, and in that place there are these unnecessary checks and balances in place which
Mm,
tell that you cannot sledge the opposition or you cannot have a fair go unless it's something very personal or it goes
yeah,
off the field. I have no problem with anyone abusing or saying anything to the other person because you're
no,
passionate, and if anyone's been out on the field they know that you get passionate on the field,
yeah,
and it makes for good television as well. I like watching people going at it, and it looks like they're actually having a game, not just having a friendly between
okay,
themselves. So yeah, that's my opinion, and a lot of people vilified Siraj for Siraj for sledging head,
mm,
and they should not do that in my opinion. He gets fired up by sledging,
mm,
like a lot of people who take it as a boost in their playing style, and
mm,
Head gave it back. And Head there's this thing where Head said that uh, he said that I said to him, well bowled, and
yeah.
he did all that. And if people believe that Head actually said well bowled, then I've got a bridge to sell to you, honestly, because
No, I'm sure he didn't say that. There might have
yeah,
been a few swear words as
yeah,
well. Actually,
yeah. So Australians should not teach people cricket. In cricket, should not teach righteousness, in my opinion.
no,
Anyways,
no.
go.
I agree. I think basically, unless it's something I don't know, racist, or you're making fun of someone's
Yeah,
kid or something, you should be able to say anything. I've got no issue with that. I remember Rabada being suspended for celebrating in Joe Root's face,
yeah,
and I didn't even think that should have been the case. I think this is all fine so long as they're not touching the person. They're just celebrating in their face or shouting at them because the opposition can do that back as well.
yeah.
So I don't see a problem with that. That's an unnecessary thing. I'd much rather they punish things like um, a slow play or run rate or things like that than
Yeah.
just someone sledging or celebrating. That's part of the game. I don't have an issue with it at all.
Yeah, same. And just to sum this up, spirit of the game is definitely a thing. Spirit of the game applies in not taking it off the field or not having physical
Yes,
altercations in there.
yeah,
but
Yeah,
having normal banter in the field should not be policed by everyone else.
no,
Just that's what I'm going to say. And yeah,
definitely.
looking up to
Do you,
Brisbane.
do you think do you think
Yeah,
Siraj though has got kind of form in the sense he's known as someone who's quite emotional and someone who does sledge. I remember him sledging Jimmy Anderson once.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Siraj is known like that, so he's very passionate, and he likes to
mhm.
have a go at the opposition whenever he can. And
But the thing is, the opposition can use it to their in their favour. Um, they don't have to kind of complain about it or anything, but they can kind of work off his emotion and make it play against him. I remember when McGrath tried to sledge Sarwan, and he said something really kind of disgusting to Sarwan, but Sarwan said something back. And McGrath lost his head, and he kept bouncing him, and Sarwan was hooking it. And in the
yeah,
end,
yeah,
Sarwan and Lara in the end chased this chased like 418. I think it's the record ever chase
yeah.
because McGrath just lost his head. And in a way, Sarwan and Lara were cool. They were cool under the sledging, didn't complain to the umpire, and they just used kind of McGrath's emotion against him.
Yeah.
So I
So
think that's the best way to do it.
yeah, so this happened to Siraj as well. This was a game between RCB and Delhi Capitals in the IPL 2023. Phil Salt
Yeah,
was batting, and Salt Siraj bowled a bouncer and went up to him and said something, and Salt did not budge. So Siraj
yeah,
got really angry and he started bowling more bouncers. And I think
yeah,
the next over, Salt hit him for 24 runs, and he did not say
yeah,
anything. He hit him for 24 runs, and Siraj was taken off the attack. So yeah, you can definitely use it to your advantage. Just be smart with it. I just don't see the point in being righteous and saying that
no,
I don't say anything. And Travis had said this thing which I think has infuriated a lot of people. He said that I'm not sure that they want to represent themselves that way, and I'm like, what do you think? He's
yeah.
not wanting to represent them anyways. So yeah, looking
We
up
don't
to,
like people taking the moral high ground. Really, it's a cricket match. It's not like a war or something. If
yeah,
it, someone sledging you isn't like immoral because they've sledged you, I think it's going overboard, isn't it? Really.
yeah. Yeah. So looking up to Brisbane,
Mm.
India, I think Shami is not coming back as Rohit confirmed. He is going to
Uh,
come back probably. The best he can come back is at Melbourne. So that's a bad thing for India. And Hazelwood's coming back. So for me, the GABA has to go to. I think the India Australia rivalry is filled with counter punches. So I'll give it to
mm.
India next game. What about you?
I think Australia are normally very good at the Gabba.
Yeah,
I think I'll give that to Australia. That's one of their kind of. They used to call it like the Gabatoir. I don't know if you remember that.
yeah,
It's
GABA
like
too.
one of those places that they always won at.
Yeah,
That's why they always used to play teams first there because they think they'd always win their first game.
yeah. Yeah, and also one more point. I think I'm forgot to mention this, but
Mm.
Nitish Reddy, he's done really well, and in both of the innings they
Mm.
picked him, and people were criticizing them for picking Nitish Reddy. Even I was saying that he is not experienced enough,
Yeah,
but he's the top scorer for India in this series till
yeah,
now. And that in three of the four innings, sorry, and that is just ridiculous to me because he bats at number 8 and
yeah,
he's not played a test before, very little first class experience, a very much like a baseball kind of pick for India,
yeah.
Jacob Bathilus, and he's done really well. So I'm really excited for the future holds for him.
And what do you think? Do you think Shami? Because he was meant to be in the New Zealand series, but he was still injured. Then he was meant to be in this series, and he's been injured the first two. And you're saying he might be injured for the third one as well.
Yeah.
Is this? Do you think this is kind of a bad sign, and he's someone who has got kind of irrevocable injury, where he's never going to go back to his full kind of his kind of peak form. Is he on his way out, or can he kind of recover from this? And I think he's about 34, isn't he? Is
35.
this kind of could it be the end for Shami?
Yeah, so Shami, let me walk you through what happened with him.
Yeah,
This is the 2023 World Cup. He played the entire World Cup, but
yeah,
he said he had an ankle sprain. So he took
ah,
injections and he played games. So it further exacerbated his injury. He had a surgery in December of 2023.
yeah,
He was expected to get fit by the IPL, but he didn't. He was then expected to get fit by the T20 World Cup, but didn't. But people were sure
yeah,
he was going to be fit for the India Australia series, but he was
yeah,
not fit then as well. And now that we felt like he's going to be fit for the third test, he's got injured
mm,
again, or he's had a swelling again in his knee. So it looks like the Jofra Archer case again, but
yeah.
older.
And also because of his age, 34 or whatever, you always worry that is that kind of terminal for a fast bowler. If they're injured all the time in their mid-30s, is that it?
Yeah, and it'll be a shame, honestly, because I wanted to see him one last time, maybe in his career in England and Australia, and
He,
maybe with
he's
the.
he he's an excellent bowler. I hope he's injured for the England series because I really fear him.
Yeah, and I think at his best, he's one of the best bowlers in the world.
Yeah, yeah,
Shami.
definitely.
Yeah. Um.
I also like the way he's got that hanky on the back of his trousers. It's like he's got a tail when he's running in. Do you notice that?
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember his celebration at Lords in 2021, where he hit a six to Moeen Ali, I think, and took out his bat in front of the entire crowd?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sadly, I was in the crowd. Like
Yeah. Did the ball
I
come to
went
you?
there thinking we were going to win, and then we'd lost. It was terrible.
Yeah, better times now, hopefully. Anyways, so coming on to England now, as we were talking of them, England versus New Zealand. England have just completely taken over storm over the
Yeah,
newly victored champions in India, and
yeah,
they've dominated them in all ways possible. New Zealand looks like a shadow of the team that played in India.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think this is what we've always said. In conditions that don't turn or move massively, England can beat anyone. England's weak. Before the series started, Jeff Boycott wrote an article for the Telegraph where he said New Zealand won't do this, but what they should do is prepare turning wickets because they've won in India and England have lost in Pakistan.
Yeah,
Um, and it sounds weird because it's New Zealand, then they never really produce turning wickets. But he was right in a sense. If you give England like a flat pitch or like an English style pitch, this side can bully you and smash you. And they could. I mean, if you saw the way they chased 369 or something against India at Edgbaston,
378.
378. Sorry, yeah. So that was against a very good attack. But on those pitches, they trust themselves and they can execute those shots.
Yeah,
So it, it wasn't the biggest, even though New Zealand are good, you it wasn't as big a surprise, was it? Because so long as Root or Brooke played well, there was always a chance this happened. The one I think the surprise was Bethel coming in at three. He's never batted at three in his life. He'd never made 100 in his life, and he took to it like a Dr. Water. And most importantly, he had a good because he's like a 2020 player or
yeah,
is famous for his 2020. Been signed up in the IPL as well. It's a surprise how good his defensive technique was, and he looked more like Strauss or Thorpe than one of these kind of modern T20 players. I don't know, like Salt or Livingston or something.
yeah,
And I think that was really impressive. Also, Pope with the gloves. England didn't take a second keeper, and Pope's kind of like a makeshift keeper. I mean, he has kept before, but he's not really a keeper. But he kept really well. You wouldn't know that that wasn't his normal position.
yeah.
Also, he scored some runs in the middle order, which I think is always the position he's better suited to. So really, I think when Jamie Smith comes back, England have got a question about how do they kind of fit Smith back in? Do they even drop Crawley, make Bethel open, and then bring Smith in at number three even,
Bethel
and,
Open.
and, and let Pope keep the gloves?
Yeah, Bethel opening is not something which is in my bucket list for 2024. So
No,
yeah,
but
yeah.
then he's basically been an opener because Crawley's been out so early all the time.
Yeah, so on Jacob Bethel, I think a lot of people, that's a W for baseball, No,
Yeah,
people were
definitely.
thinking that he's not going to do well, or he's going to have a hard time just coming off with little to no FC
Yeah,
record, and he's done really well. So good on them for scouting so well. And with Harry Brook, I think, yeah, he scored 123 of 115 balls,
yeah.
and I looked at a few of his shots. I think he came out of his crease and uh, hit a six to the
Right.
cover fence, right? And that looked very good to me. It had shades of Ricky Ponting when he used to play in his prime, and
He also reminds me of Kevin Peterson.
yeah, Kevin Peterson as well. And he's a real talent for England. He can, if he really locks in with Test cricket,
Mm,
he's a 10,000 run Test player, and
yeah,
and
and
and he
also
yeah,
a world class player in all formats as well.
yeah, world class player in all formats and a potential captaincy candidate as well. So
Definitely. I
yeah,
think, and also you see the bowling emerge as well. Cars, Atkinson. I think Wokes will be phased out eventually, but people like Cars and Atkinson. Then you've got hopefully Archer and Wood coming back. Worrell qualifies as well. I don't know if maybe some people don't know him out there, but he's this Australian who's about
yeah,
32, 33. he's played a couple of on-dayers for Australia. He plays for Surrey. In the county championship, he's like lethal. He gets like wickets all the time, and he
Yeah.
qualifies for England in May as well. So there's a few good bowlers they've got there. Potts, Stone. Um, so they're all kind of emerging, and it's quite. They're building up quite a good seam attack anyway. That I would be tempted, given the fact that our spinners aren't that penetrative, to just have an all pace attack like the West Indies used to. And if we need spin, just rely on root. I'd rather have Cast, Atkinson, Wood and Archer, or Wood and Worrell, or whatever, or Wood and Wokes, than have um, not have one of them and have Bashir just for the sake of it, just because he's
Yeah.
a spinner.
Yeah.
I think Indy would much rather face Bashir than face an extra seam bowler, don't you?
Yeah, I agree with that. And same with Australia. They prepare seaming wickets, and Lyon only got to bowl one over. So
Yeah, because
what's
imagine
the point?
when Hazelwood's fit again, you could say if there's another seaming wicket, you could have Boland, Hazelwood, Cummings, and Stark.
Yeah, I had a question for you.
Yeah,
Uh, would you slot Archer directly back into this lineup, because all the bowlers except Folks obviously is
yeah,
are performing,
yeah.
and Archer with the kind of fitness he has, does he really warrant a direct slotting in into the Test
Mm.
side?
I the thing is, I think our weakness has always been, for some reason, the tail, and I think he might be the key to bowling out tail enders with his Yorkers or a quick bouncer in a way that someone like Wokes wouldn't be able to.
Yeah,
So again, and also because of the fact he's a bit of a kind of big match player or a kind of a glamour player.
yeah,
I think he would kind of rise to the occasion against India and Australia.
yeah.
I wouldn't bring him back for Zimbabwe or anything, but against India, I would really be tempted to bring him in, even though it's a bit unfair on the other players who've played all this time and committed, and he's been out all this time injured, and he signed up for the IPL, which surprised England. I think that quality maybe against India might make a difference. What about you?
For me, it had have to, like, he'd have to prove his game. He'd have
Mm,
to go and play some county cricket or whatever before getting
yeah,
into the England side, because a lot of people, England has a really good pace bowling lineup. If you remove Vokes in there, you've got
mm,
Atkinson, Cars, and uh, you've got Worrell, and like you said,
yeah.
Wood. So many bowlers, a lot of
Pot, Stone.
Pot, Stone, Hull.
Mm,
So many bowlers to choose from. Saqib Mahmood when he gets fit or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Maroon's a
So,
good
so
call.
so in that, if you put an Archer in there who's around, what's his age, to 30, 29, whatever.
Yeah, he's 30 in February, I think.
Yeah, so he's 30. He's not a very young right now. So in my opinion, he has to prove himself. He is not a direct selection for me. And
I think where they went wrong was in 2019.
yeah,
Peterson said, um, "I think this guy just wants to play white ball cricket," and England were quite incredulous and said, "Oh, don't talk nonsense, don't talk rubbish." But it was probably true. And what they could have done is mainly used him for white ball, but also used him for the Ashes and India series because he's like a big match
yeah,
type player.
yeah,
But they just kind of flogged him, and he was like bowling like 40 overs in an innings against us against New Zealand. And um, I
yeah.
think he's more of a kind of. I think you just have to accept that some players are just like the big occasion, and then you just play them in that. You just kind of adjust. Play Wokes against New Zealand or Zimbabwe, but maybe Archer's a guy for India or Australia. You kind of got to think pragmatically in that way.
Yeah, like your low battery analogy. And
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
when they came to India in 2021, they played Archer in one or two of the
Yeah,
tests, I remember, and I did not get the point of playing Archer there, because the in the first test, maybe, or the second test, he bowled around 20 overs in one day, and I was thinking, what is Root doing?
yeah.
What's the point
I
of
remember that. That was the first test where they won, and the attack was like they didn't play broad. They played Anderson, Archer, two spinners. I think it was Leach and Bess, and
Yeah,
Stokes as the all rounders, a third seamer.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it's true. I think Leach got most of the wickets in that game, didn't he? And Anderson.
yeah, yeah. Anderson had a really good spell going on. He found reverse swing. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
and he got Kohli out at one stage, didn't he? I
yeah,
think.
I got Kohli out. For me, that's the thing. They overused Archer, and he had low battery, and they
Mm.
decided to fulfill all of their short term goals, not looking long term. And
And also it shouldn't have been surprising for them. It's really weird because you've got all these statisticians. I mean, You had that great conversation with Dan Weston.
Yeah.
You got all these statisticians, all this science, sports science stuff. Archer had hardly played a non T20 game. He'd hardly played 50 over cricket before he played in that World Cup. He'd mainly been a T20 guy, hadn't he?
Yeah.
So for his body to kind of adjust and adapt all of a sudden at 24, 25 to the rigors of Test cricket, it was asking a lot, wasn't it? Really, they didn't kind of factor that in.
Yeah, and it just looked like they had some, like, you give some really good toy, or you give some really big, a lot of money to a toddler, and they just throw it around on whatever they get. That was
Yeah,
how Root handled Archer basically in that
yeah.
Ashes series. And yeah, coming on to New Zealand now, well, they had not many good performances apart from Tom
No,
Blundell, who had a really good 100 in the second innings.
yeah.
I just
Although,
do.
how do you see? You know, when someone gets 100 and the game's over, do you think that kind of should you put like an asterisk next to it? Really, because New Zealand were going to lose. He came in, I think, at what I think maybe like 70 for four or something,
Yeah,
or maybe 40 for four. And it
yeah,
was obviously they weren't going to chase, I don't know, 583.
yeah,
And England had an attacking field, and they were happy to almost buy wickets.
yeah.
Do you think that 100 counts as much as 100 where the game is still kind of in the balance?
It does not count as much objectively for me, but looking at New Zealand and their overall scheme of performances, it's definitely something which stands out
Yeah,
in
yeah.
what is a relatively mediocre performance from them overall. Yeah. So Kane Williamson didn't do particularly well,
No.
and he's falling behind really big time in the Fab Four charts. Latham
What?
Conway, yeah,
Because it's funny on Twitter, you always see this. Um, Whenever like Root gets 100 or Williamson or Kohli, there's always like tweets comparing the Fab Four, isn't there? It's quite
yeah,
interesting. I mean, you know, credit really to a lot of Indian fans who are almost impartial in a sense. They keep tracking these Fab Four, and you kind of always noting when they get 100. It's quite good. I don't think anyone else from any other country really does that in that way. But I always see kind of Indian fans who say, "Oh, some of them are like, even though they're Indian, they're like, I'm a big Root fan or I'm a big Williamson fan." I don't know. Did you notice this as well?
yeah.
And it's almost like their favorite singer or their favorite actor or something.
Yeah, so there might be the one-off case where they support Root or Williamson, but I'll tell
Yeah.
you who are the majority of the people who do not uh, uh, like support Kohli in the Fab Four race. They are the ones who are, like, there's the two factions, Kohli Sharma faction in the fan wars,
Okay. Yeah.
and there's the Dhoni faction as well. So there's a big there are fan wars going on all the time on cricket Twitter. So all the se- uh, like fans from the sections of Rohit Sharma and Dhoni,
Yeah.
they go on and support Williamson or Root. So that's basically the
Oh,
thing
that's the
why that
reason.
happens. Yeah.
But I mean, Root's now got 36 Test centuries. That's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, 36 test centuries, and with Joe Root, he just looks like he'll never stop, right? I said before the
Yeah.
series that he's going to have a dry series this time, but he just looks like that's a tap which can't be closed. And his
What's
100,
funny is
yeah,
he went through a stage where he only got. Do you remember there was a stage, maybe it's 2019 or 20, where he just got 50s and he
yeah,
couldn't convert.
yeah.
And now he's just like a machine. He's getting hundreds all the time.
20 centuries in the last 2 years or something like that.
Wow. And that's from when he was like 32 to 34.
Yeah, that
It's
is
a bit
just
like Graham Gooch. Graham Gooch got loads of hundreds from about 33 to 40.
yeah. But Roots had it for 6 7 years continuously, and it's phenomenal what he's been able to achieve, in my opinion.
Do you
He
think he'll catch Sachin's overall Test runs record?
I if he continues on, but there's this thing where once he gets to 35, 36, what's his
Yeah.
age right now?
He's 34 now, I think, or 34 in December. Yeah, I think 34 in a few weeks.
Yeah, so in 1 or 2 years, I think his eye will start to go, and once that
Yeah.
goes, it'll be a problem for him. But if he can continue on half of where he is at right now, he'll reach there. But yeah, it's going to be hard in any case. But just looking at Root right now, if he has a good time, I think Lehman said that he's not
Mm,
up to the mark with Kohli or Smith because he's not scored a century in Australia, and I partially disagree with that because
mm.
whatever he's been able to do in India, which are completely different conditions from
Yeah.
England, and in England he's been phenomenal, and New Zealand, Pakistan, all those places.
And
So
also, it's not like he doesn't get hundreds against Australia. It's just he doesn't get them in Australia.
yeah,
But also, I think Brian Lara, one of the all-time greats, only got 100 in India. That
yeah.
doesn't mean that he's not an all-time great.
Yeah. So my point would be that if he get, the only thing left in his career is to win the WTC, obviously, but I don't think England
Yeah,
takes it seriously. But
yeah.
win an Ashes in Australia and score a century there, and then he'll be one of the best. He's already one of the best Test players ever, but he's going to really cement his legacy in there as maybe in the top 15, top 20 Test players ever.
I think. How do you think England are shaping up for that Ashes? Because it's been quite funny. They talk about it non-stop, but the kind of team is kind of taking shape, and you'd fancy them more in Australia than you would on like Turner's. If the pitches are a bit like the one in New Zealand, you, you would say that Australia might be on a slight decline with a lot of aged
Yeah.
players, and England with a lot of kind of young players. You could say there's room for optimism there.
Yeah. So if England can overcome their mental block,
Yeah,
they have one, like England will go in favorites into the Ashes. That's in my opinion to win the Ashes, because Australia looks like a jaded side, and in 1 year
yeah,
time they will not. They will be even older than they are
yeah,
right now. Khawaja will probably be on the verge of retirement. The
yeah.
three quicks will not be there anymore, or one of them will definitely not be there anymore, in my opinion.
I mean,
Uh,
isn't it Stark's 35, isn't he? And Hazelwood's 34, and I think Cummings is still okay. Was he
yeah,
32 or something?
yeah. Stark,
Lyon's
Stark,
about 37.
yeah. Yeah, so one of them will go in my opinion, and for England it looks really promising. They just have to keep their injury sheet clean and keep
Yeah.
their mental block at bay, and then they have a real chance of beating both India and Australia next year.
What do you make of Stokes at 7? Do you think that's a good move?
I would rather Stokes at number three, but if he wants to play
Yeah,
at
same, same.
if Stokes wants to play at number seven, then so be it. And
Did you
now,
did you see
yeah,
him declaring when he was 49 yesterday?
yeah, that's good, right?
Yeah,
That's good. If he does not care, like I would care about the stats, but if he's not
yeah,
caring, then good for him, good for England. And overrates in cricket. Now, this is something I'm really pissed about,
yeah.
and I'm going to say that Ben Stokes went to the match referee and didn't sign the documentation, and
Mm,
he said before that the WTC is utterly confusing.
mm.
Now, to you and me, if the WTC is confusing, it's acceptable, but to a professional captain
No,
of one of the biggest cricket nations,
yeah,
with hundreds of cricket quiz analysts sitting right at his
yeah,
desk,
yeah,
not
exactly.
being able to decipher the table is ridiculous. And then you know the rules before the game has started.
Yeah,
You've
exactly.
benefited from absurd rules in the past as well, so
Yeah,
you should respect the rules. And this looks very arrogant, and not the way they should
yeah.
be
Because
going
I
about the
don't think
things.
he fully kind of he wasn't looking at it fairly. He said we finish games in 3 or 4 days, which is true,
Yeah,
but there's an unfair advantage of just bowling 80 overs a day or 83 overs a day
yeah,
because it means that the bowlers get less tired. So there is an unfair advantage if you're bowling 7 overs less.
yeah,
Um, and also, there's the issue of the paying public. Now, there was a lot of people tweeting me saying they don't really mind. They're happy for just 6.5 hours. And it doesn't matter to them if it's 83, 84, or 85 or whatever. It was fair enough. But, you are paying for 90 overs. And if you went to the cinema and they took off the last 20 minutes of a film, you'd be
yeah,
annoyed, wouldn't you?
yeah,
So if cricket is a kind of entertainment as well,
yeah,
you do want those 90 overs bowled in a day.
yeah,
And also, it's not up to him in a sense. Um, these are the rules set out, and it's not subjective. It's objective, and he has to play to the rules they've
exactly,
set. I mean,
exactly.
could he say, I don't know, I was out caught on the boundary, and it was fluky because I don't know, the guy took an amazing catch, so it doesn't
Yeah,
count. No, if it's out, it's out. The rules are the rules.
yeah,
Um,
he did
and
understand that in 2019.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's the thing. So I think when he was a player, he was a really streetwise player, like
Yeah,
Steve Waugh
yeah,
or Dhoni.
yeah, yeah,
Really streetwise.
yeah,
You kind of he knew what he needed to do to win.
yeah,
I think when he's become captain, he's taken on a kind of evangelical zeal,
yeah,
um, where it's like he he thinks he has a responsibility for the whole game of cricket, and anything he says is like for the good of cricket. So I think Murray Erasmus said to him during an Ashes test, "Look, you're bowling like 11 overs an hour,"
Yeah.
and he said, "No, look at the fans; they love it." And it's like, well, that's not the rules, is it? It's
Exactly.
kind of like he took on this philosophy that he was changing cricket. You know, him and McCollum and Key or whatever,
Yeah.
and they were saving cricket.
Saving the
But
street. Yeah.
it's a kind of he was a bit kind of I don't, he's taking it too far, I think, and it's got to go back to reality.
The cricket's fine for them. Leave aside the cricket. Just stop the talking. In my opinion, play the
Yeah,
cricket.
exactly. Yeah, I
Stop.
think a
Yeah.
friend
So
of the show, Lee Wilkinson, message.
yeah.
He was saying that there was a point made by Macpherson
Yeah.
who said there's kind of an anomaly in the sense that if Australia bowl really slowly but bowl the side out in 80 overs or under, then it doesn't count. They don't get deducted
Yeah, so
points.
I'm going to get to that. Yeah, yeah. So
Mm.
I'm just going to say on Stokes. So think the same thing. He used to be arrogant back in the day as well, but right now
Yeah.
he's not arrogant in the same way where
No.
he's more complacent about things. And now on the overrate bit, I'm going like overrate was installed in the first place. Like, let me just come on to the cricketing bit first. So
Yeah.
people were giving me this logic that if you'd have 85 overs of play and you got 450 runs, whereas 90
Mm.
overs and 270, the 85 overs are better. So if you're
Mm.
going to, would you take a 70 over minute football game over a 90-minute
No.
where
No.
there are only three goals scored, whereas compared to a 90-minute football game where there are no goals scored, you wouldn't,
Yeah.
right? Because you paid
No.
for
No.
90
No.
minutes. And that's the same thing with cricket. And now looking at why it was installed in the first place, so you have and a broadcaster agreement. The ICC has to talk with the broadcasters of all countries
Mm.
before each series, and the broadcaster says to the host country as well as the ICC that 90 overs we'll have 90 ad slots.
Yeah.
We pay for 90 ad slots, and if the
Yeah.
over rates aren't fulfilled, then they have to bear the losses. And so this is why this was installed in the first place. And now when you don't have that, then it happens. And why in the 80 overs rule, where if you bowl the opposition out below
Mm.
80 overs, you do not face sanctions. It's because when you take 10 wickets, you're naturally making up for the overs
Mm.
lost. Do you realize, like, ten more intervals, so 80 plus 10, 90 intervals are already done. So that's
Yeah.
why that's why the rules don't apply in this situation. So it's all a bit commercial, and I do understand that it's not ideal. It's not
Mm.
where you want to be with all that. Maybe the WTC points could be made in a different way, but I think this is the best way because runs are too arbitrary. Anyways, those are for other discussions, but if there are rules in front of you, you have to respect them, and I think that's the end of
Yeah.
it.
You can't pretend that either you didn't know the rules, or even worse, that you didn't look at the rules before the tournament started.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's criminal, really. I mean, I'm hoping that he does know the rules and he's using this as a kind of smokescreen.
Yeah,
But if
just
you genuinely didn't look at the rules before, that's a bit of a kind of a bit negligent, I think.
yeah. And I saw there's a guy called Stephen Rowe on Twitter, and
Oh yeah,
he's a Kiwi fan, and New Zealand are really going may suffer really badly from the sanctions which they faced with their over eight penalties, and he
yeah,
didn't have any problem with that.
yeah.
He also called out what Stokes said. He called out his excuse making, and that's what I think a lot of people in the media, as well as the, like, I saw a graph from Wisden where they said
Mm,
the point WTC points table without the over eight
mm.
penalties. Like, yeah, sure. Now those are literally the rules of the competition. It's like
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's silly. I mean,
yeah,
what about doing the WCTC table without a defeat to Pakistan, who
yeah,
might be higher up? But it
yeah.
happened. You know that it's a bit strange doing things like that for Wisden.
For Wisden, yeah, it just looks like it looks a bit silly to me, and that's just it. And in my opinion, this England side is playing really well. They have a chance of being something really really good,
Mm.
and these small facades, these things out in front of the media, that it just spoils their reputation if they.
And the other thing, and a lot of people were tweeting me saying, and by the way, these tweets are all kind of friendly. There was no kind of animosity or anything, but
Yeah.
they're all saying, look, I'd rather go to a game with 85 overs when it's, I don't know, someone's 400 for five than a 90 over game. And I don't care. I don't care about the 5 overs. But it doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be 85 overs of exciting cricket versus 90 overs of boring.
Yeah.
What about 90 overs of exciting cricket? It can be that too.
Yeah. And what people don't realize is once you remove the 90 overs limit, people say that there does not need to be a mark. When you remove 90 overs, you have 80 overs. And when there are
Yeah.
80 overs, people are going to bowl 70 overs.
And
And
what
it,
about like cheating? I mean, you could you could draw a match that you were going to lose because you take so long bowling the overs.
yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, right? And people were also saying that over rates do not count because run rates are good. And I'm like, does that mean that a team playing Brexit football at the ranked teams in the PL are going to be sanctioned more than say Manchester City? No, right?
Yeah,
You're allowed to play however you want to.
yeah.
It's just the rules which apply, and that's just nonsense in my opinion.
You
And
you don't want subjectivity in sport, do you? You
yeah,
want the best. You want the side that wins the game according to the rules to win it. You can't have someone saying, "Well, I scored quicker, so therefore I deserve to win." Well, who said? If you've got 5 days to win a test, you've
yeah.
got 5 days to win a test. Winning it in three, that's fine, but it doesn't make you morally superior or anything. It's just a different way of doing it.
Yeah, and the over, it's like, what do you make of them? Let's leave aside the fact of you being an England fan.
Yeah,
What do you make of the way way they are right now? Do you think they're right or wrong?
I think you should bowl 15 overs an hour. That's what you're meant to bowl.
Yeah,
And I think if you didn't have all these stoppages, you'd be able to.
yeah,
My feeling is that since well-paid franchise leagues have come in, a lot of cricketers think they're doing people a favour just playing international cricket,
yeah,
and it's like, look, you're lucky that I'm even bloody bowling 85 overs. I
yeah,
could just be in the Cayman Islands, making loads of money here. So I'm doing you like a kind of favour, and
yeah,
I think that's why how a lot of cricketers think now. Because they would probably say that I don't need this stress, I don't need this scrutiny. I could play in a franchise league where no one even cares what the result is. Lots of the games are fixed, and I get loads of money regardless. And so I don't need this scrutiny or pressure.
yeah,
So
yeah.
be thankful to have me.
Yeah, that's just a load of right.
I think that's a lot of their attitude, though. Do you?
Yeah, I do as well, and so you agree that 90 overs should be bowled as well,
Definitely,
but
definitely. And remember, there's an extra half an hour, and these
yeah,
teams still aren't bowling the
yeah.
minimum of 90 overs, even with the extra half an hour.
Y-
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, ridiculous. And what do you think of the penalties then? The penalties which are applying to the World Test Championship points standings.
I think I wouldn't have done it that way, but there's no excuse because everyone knows the rules before it starts.
Yeah,
Personally, I would have a penalty of 6 runs for every over not bowled or the team's run rate in the actual game, and it goes down in the extras column. But if that's the way, if everyone knows the rules and they've all agreed to it before they started, they can't complain.
yes, yeah, they can't complain. We agree on that, but
Yeah,
on the rule itself, I would say that suppose for England, it would be a bit unfair. Say England are batting at 7 runs an over and they
yeah,
score 300, and New Zealand do the same in 4 runs an over. So England are going to be penalized more in that aspect. And I
yeah.
think I think that's why it gets a little arbitrary, because if you find them 6 runs and over in any case, then 6 runs in the first game in Pakistan where they scored 1,001 million odd,
Oh yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
not going to be the same as the game in Perth against India Australia where 1 or 2 runs can
yeah,
make the
yeah. That
entire
would make a big
difference.
difference.
Yeah, so you cannot have a specific number, and that's why, in my opinion, the way it's implemented right now, where you have the WTC table taking inflections, is the
Mm.
only actual way to do it somewhat fairly. But if someone has any other changes which they suggest to me, I could look into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. We're not saying it's perfect, but we're just saying that there's rules that are written that everyone's seen,
Yeah,
and it's a bit kind of churlish to complain about them halfway through when you know very well what the rules are.
yeah, and
But
make
there could
excuses.
be definitely better ways of doing it.
Yeah.
We're just saying that we all know the rules, and it's a bit silly to complain about them halfway through or near the end of the cycle.
Yeah, and make excuses and say that's why my team is not on at the top of the
Yeah,
table.
yeah, exactly.
That's a bit ridiculous. Yeah, so now coming on to Sri Lanka versus South Africa, the game happened at Gekherba, which is very hard to pronounce. And
Yeah, yeah, I can't pronounce it.
yeah, there wasn't any rain like I predicted, so you should definitely trust my forecasts, both in cricket and in weather. Uh, so yeah, the game is going on right now. It's not finished, but
No,
in the first innings, it's a relatively flat pitch, and South Africa scored 358,
Yeah,
Sri Lanka 328, and they need around 143 to win right now.
with 5 wickets
So, with
left.
5 wickets left,
Yeah,
I think it's tilted towards South Africa, and people should
yeah.
agree in that regard. And
I think it was a bit disappointing. Sri Lanka should have had a first innings lead, but they lost a
yeah,
lot of wickets yesterday
collapsed really badly.
early on.
Collapsed really badly,
Yeah.
and this feels a little like it feels a little strange to me because I had expected more out of this Sri Lankan batting lineup,
Yeah.
and people did as well. Kamindu Mendes, did he turn up or did he not? He scored
What did he
48.
get today? About 30 odd, I think. And then he got. I think he went out. He got out to Maharaj, I think.
Do you think the fame's gotten to him? Because I see this with a lot of players where once they score a lot of runs in a
Yeah.
heap, they just fall off. They think they're kings of the world, and then they just
Maybe.
fall
I
off.
mean, we said he was in the new Fab Four,
It's
didn't we?
too
We
early
spoke
right
about
now, but
it.
still, yeah.
Um, I mean, I think the whole Sri Lankan 1 to 7 average over 40. It's a very good 1 to 7 actually. Um, but maybe it's South African conditions. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the issue for them.
Yeah, and this pitch is not doing all that much, honestly. It's
No.
spinning a bit, actually. So it should.
Matthews played maybe an overly aggressive shot against Maharaj today.
Oh, I
Um,
didn't see that, but
yeah,
but yeah, I would say that there needs to be some introspection for Sri Lanka if they do not go on to win this game. And with South Africa, I think all's rolling well for them, and they
yeah.
still look on their way to having that WTC
Well,
final, the
if we
ticket to
assume
the
they win this test, which they probably
yeah,
will they just have to win? Will they just have to draw 1-1 with Pakistan to be in the WTC final?
1-1 or yeah, 1-1 or win 2-0 or one draw and one win. So yeah, those are the
They
three things.
should probably do that in South African conditions, shouldn't they?
Yeah, or maybe Pakistan do Pakistan and win 2-0. You never know, right? But yeah, the
Yeah,
most probable scenario is that South Africa go in, and for them looking at it right now, Bavuma did well. So
yeah,
yeah, that's another tick for him as a captain. And Tristan Stubbs, he did well, and he's got a really good future, like we mentioned in the
yeah.
last game as well. The batting lineup, which people were like, I also made it out to be a very not a very solid one, and
No,
they've somehow managed to have this rough, decentish
yeah,
performance gathering from everyone. Everyone's chipping bit by bit, and
yeah,
they're gathering, making 300, 350, and that's really good for them because they've got arguably the second best pace bowling lineup in the world,
yeah.
and with that
It's
when
an
you
excellent pace bowling lineup. And
and
actually, I think Maharaj might well be their best ever spinner. I'm trying to
yeah,
think of South African sides that I've known. I mean, this would be post-apartheid, but Nicky Boye or Paul Adams or someone, they weren't as good as Maharaj, I don't think.
you do not rate Hashim Amla's spin, right?
I suppose there was Imran Tahir.
Yeah, I was
I
thinking
think
but
maybe Maharaj is better than Imran Tahir as well. I think he might be
yeah,
their best spinner.
yeah, and tests definitely white ball
Yeah, yeah,
cricket.
in test, yeah.
Yeah, tests definitely. Maharaj and Maharaj is one of the best off spinners in the world right now. If you remove India, he's one of the best spinners in the world
Yeah.
right now as well, right? England would take
And he's
him in my
handy with a
opinion.
bat as well. I think he's a really good player.
Yeah, and Marco Janssen again, and Kyle Verreynne. How much did he score? I think he scored 65 in the first innings. So yeah, he's done well for his spot right now. Oh no, 105. So yeah, he scored a century, and Ryan Rickelton as well.
I think he's
So
just signed for Nottingham in England as well.
Verreynne or Rickelton.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he had a few questions on his spot, and he's scored a century to get them off him. And Rabada scored 23, like you said. So yeah, a really good performance from South Africa, and that's it from their regard. Now coming on to the West Indies versus Bangladesh, well, I didn't catch up with much of that game, but Bangladesh seemed to have won that game, and that's a pleasant surprise
It
for
was
me.
amazing because they were bowled out cheaply and Windies were like 100 odd for one.
Yeah.
And it looked like Windies would win it, but they just collapsed.
Okay.
And I think they're now bottom of the rankings.
All
There was a
right.
lot of kind of talk about it in the West Indies. I was reading like a Trinidad paper, and they were saying like
Only
Sack
you were
Brathwaite.
reading that.
Yeah, yeah, I subscribe to that one. But
Subscribe.
lots of people were saying, Sack Brathwaite. He's had a he was a really decent opener, but for some reason at 31, 32, he seems to kind of have gone off the boil. And then the rest of that lineup isn't good at all. Even I like Athanaze and Hodge, but they're not. I don't think they're world class players. And Holder's another funny one where he didn't play in that series, and you wonder, is it, he didn't play in that series? He didn't play in the series in Australia. Is he
Yeah.
like? I know sometimes he's injured, but I don't like it when players kind of pick and choose what series to play in. Myself.
Yeah, like doing a favor to the team. I'm bigger than you, I'm bigger than the team.
Yeah,
That's the
that's it.
mentality which they carry, and I'm all for player power, but this is too much in my opinion as well.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe he's at the age where he thinks he's got to maximize his earnings in franchise leagues.
Yeah, but he's been maximizing his earnings from franchise leagues since he was born, right? So
Oh yeah, that's true.
yeah, and their batting lineup is doing disservice to watch it. What is not is a half decent bowling lineup in my
Oh yeah,
opinion.
very
And
good bowling lineup.
yeah, and honestly, like Craig Brathwaite, like you mentioned, he had a good patch
Yeah.
pre-COVID, and Mikhail Lewis, like they have a really inexperienced batting
Hmm.
lineup, and none of them are really turning up. And
No.
with West Indies cricket, it looks very gloomy to me whenever I look at their
Mm.
scorecards. Losing to Bangladesh at home
Yeah,
is a bit sad.
I think they've got two tests against Pakistan to finish off this round of WTC. It's in Pakistan though, so you think they'd probably lose. And then I think they start the next WTC with a three-test series at home to Australia, so that would be quite interesting.
Yeah, they might want to turn up for that series against Australia, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
With Pakistan, I don't expect them to win at all. Uh,
No, no.
yeah, so let's wrap that up right now, and now let's talk about the boycott which players have done to the 100. So
Oh, that's interesting.
or are planning to boycott it. So what's happened is the 100 or the ECB has forbidden players from England to participate in leagues which clash, or players who are contracted with the ECB to participate in leagues which clash with the English domestic schedule, except for the IPL. So they're
Mm,
teaming up and they want to play the PSL, and they may boycott the 100 for playing those leagues. And in
mm,
my opinion, the ECB is a bit ridiculous at times,
mm.
but I think they've done the right move by
Yeah,
prioritizing their domestic schedule.
I agree with you. I think that it couldn't go on like this, where there were players like Alex Hales or Liam Dawson or whatever, where they were playing part of the county championship, part of the Pakistani league, part of the Sri Lankan league,
Yeah,
part of the USA league. I know Jason Roy was doing that as well,
yeah.
and it was called I think it's the MLS league, is it? MLS, was it
MLC.
MLC?
Yeah,
Yeah,
MLC.
and it was like it just wasn't. We couldn't continue that way. I think the ECB made the right decision. And also, I think you'll find a lot of the players that are threatening to boycott that these are kind of either players who are probably has-beens or just these kind of um, players that go around the world playing in French. They're not guys who play in the IPL like Brook. These are guys that play like in the Cayman Islands or something, or the PSL or some other leagues. And if they want to quit red ball cricket in England, that's fine. I don't think it'd be like a big loss.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. That this is why we advocate for splitting the formats, because
Yeah, yeah.
what players do right now, you have the security of the county contract to fall back on at any time, and then you're going out, and it's like basically having the wife at home and going on and cheating every night with someone
Yeah,
else,
it's,
and
it's,
that's what they're doing every
it's a
time.
good analogy.
Yeah. Now, and people are saying that the IPL shouldn't be given an exempt too, and in my opinion, that's just being impervious to the reality and being
Yeah,
wishful. That's wishful
th-
thinking, honestly.
that's someone who doesn't live in the real world. People who say that you've got no choice really there.
Are you promoting Andrew Tate here, the real world? Yeah, yeah. Um. Anyways, I think you wanted to mention a topic earlier where you said that Tim Southee, which I forgot to mention, Southee
Hmm.
should be phased out of the New Zealand team, and I think I agree with that as well. And he should not, in my opinion, if New Zealand want to win the next test, he should not play the next game.
Yeah, all it is. I mean, he's been a great servant for New Zealand, but this series, England have really targeted him. Even kind of new guys like Bethel,
Yeah,
and they've really kind of smashed him around the ground. And I just wonder, should a player be able just to pick when they retire? In a sense, it's almost like New Zealand doing this out of politeness. That he said this is his last series. He he's probably gone on one series too long.
yeah,
They've lost the series already. Shouldn't the third test be a time for them to try someone new or to start to move on to the future? And given the fact they've lost the series already, it's an ideal time because it doesn't really matter if they lose or not. And is international cricket like a testimonial, or should Saudi have just
Exactly.
gone in this test when they know they lost the series?
You should not have sentiment in an international
No.
game, right? And if it can happen to Jimmy Anderson, it can happen to Tim Southee as well, right? Because
Yeah, definitely.
th- England
Um,
didn't have much on the line in that West Indies series, but they still, and it was the wrong decision in my opinion. They should have given
mm,
him the entire series. But anyways, they gave him only one test. But yeah, if Saudi wants a farewell, he's not looking up to the mark, and he looks really slow. He had the number of Rohit Sharma, but nowadays everyone has the number on Rohit Sharma, right? Yeah,
he's got
even
this. I think he needs five sixes to get to 100 sixes in Test cricket. Maybe that's what he's looking to get before he retires.
yeah. So maybe give Shoaib Bashir the ball and hit
Yeah,
5 sixes, and then retire immediately. Get hit on the head and get the concussion replacement on as soon as that. Yeah,
yeah. I think
mid
you can
game.
see that. You could see that Stokes had realised that because the field for him, it wasn't like three slips, a golly, a short leg. Everyone
Yeah.
was like on the boundary. And in the end, I think he was caught on the boundary. I think off for Stokes actually. I think Stokes kept bowling short, and he hooked him straight to a fielder.
Yeah. Yeah, and also now this is something which is really like it seems very childish to me, the ICC Champions Trophy. There's talks of it going around. Just to wrap this episode up, there's talks of it every single day, and we said in the last episode that it was on the verge of being finalized, and the talks are still going on, and it's only 2 months to go for the trophy, and you still don't have the schedule. It's
That's
ridiculous.
amazing.
It's
It's.
ridiculous. Yeah. Go on.
I mean, the sad thing is for cricket fans, in
Yeah.
football, you know about 8 months in advance where the tournament is, the fixtures, all everything. You just know 8 months in advance.
Yeah.
But in cricket, you can go 2 months before a tournament and still not know what's happening.
Yeah, it's ridiculous to me, honestly, and they still don't know the venues where they're going to play, and no one
No,
cares about the Champions Trophy. In my
no,
opinion, you don't need to have the Champions Trophy.
no.
Bennett have the only the World Cup and the T20 World Cup,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
we already have too many ICC tournaments. I was seeing this American guy post for a sport that's only taken seriously by 4 teams, and cricket has too many world tournaments. All the 4 teams make the semifinals and win one of the 4 times.
Yeah, I think I think it's really just a money making thing, isn't it? Really, the ICC trophy.
Yeah, it has no real relevance to it. Does anyone say, "Oh, we won a Champions Trophy" apart from South Africa in 1998, and they also don't boast of it too often. Anyways, I think this has been a really good episode, and we're going to be back next Saturday or Friday, whenever, or
Yeah,
Sunday, whenever the time comes, and we'll see you then. Till then, goodbye.
yeah. Bye.